presents Chocolate Yoddah Live.
Hi folks, Chocolate Yoddah here. Having trouble with my technology once again. Oh, Yoddah is spelled Y-O-D-D-A-H because film studios are litigious. Let's see. Welcome to another installment of Chocolate Yoddah Live. Today is Monday, July 10, 2023. Hello to the Wisdom app. Hello to the folks on Clubhouse. I'm still working on my technology to figure out how to speak to people live, but it's coming soon. I just ordered a piece of equipment and hopefully that'll help. We'll see. Anyway, what do I want to talk about today? Today, I want to talk about judgment. Now, people have a lot of varying ideas about judgment and what it is and whether it should be done, shouldn't be done, that kind of stuff. We know that religion says judgment is a bad thing. And maybe it is, but we'll figure it out. When I think about judgment, I think about labeling things, right? Because basically, I guess that's what you're doing, right? If you say someone is bad or someone is wrong or someone is evil, you're assigning a label to them. And I remember that it was Soren Kierkegaard who said that when you label me, you negate me. That's kind of interesting. And maybe there's some truth to that. But I think of the famous balcony soliloquy that Juliet Capulet gave. If you remember Romeo and Juliet, or even if you don't, there was a rivalry between the Capulets and the Montagues. Romeo is a Montague. So Romeo Montague meets Juliet Capulet. Their families are rivals, bitter, violent rivals. And she is into him. So when she's standing on the balcony, she's basically trying to understand, maybe even rationalize her desire for Romeo Montague. And as she's contemplating the rivalry between the families, she starts thinking about their names. And she asks, what's in a name? What's in a name? Because a name is what? A label. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So basically what she's saying is that names are irrelevant. Of course, she's trying to justify her desire, so we have to take that with a grain of salt, right? So what's the whole point of labeling people? Because we have lots of labels, right? I myself have father as my first label, salesperson, I guess, since that's been my career, ex-husband to 2 women, grandfather, affectionately known as grandpa, to 3 young people, right? And you could label me Dominican, because that's where I was born, the Dominican Republic. You can label me black, because there really is no difference between blacks and Hispanics, but that's a story for another time. What else? You could label me fat, you could label me male, you could label me 59 years of age. There's lots of labels, right? And if you notice, when people meet for the first time, it seems like that entire process of meeting someone and getting to know someone is just a series of assigning labels to that person, right? You meet someone, oh, where are you from? So there's the nationality label, right? What religion are you? So there's that label, which is possibly the most useless one. Because it's like, oh, I have an imaginary friend. What's your imaginary friend? So, okay, some people think they need to know that. But there's that label. What do you do for a living? There's the vocation label. What do you like to do? Oh, what political party are you? That's a big one, right? What political party are you affiliated with? So there's your political affiliation label. So all these labels, right? Are both parents alive? So if not, you have that label. Are you an only child or do you have siblings? There's that label. Do you get along with your mother? Do you get along with your father? There's that label. So it's sort of this quasi-detective work that we do when we first meet someone in order to fit them into categories. There's boxes, right? You put people in boxes, and I think, to Kierkegaard's point, is that these things can be negating. They can be too narrow. If someone says, I'm a Democrat, and you think you understand what that means automatically, you are narrowly defining someone. If someone says the same about being a Republican, it's the same thing, even MAGA Republicans. If I think that I know everything about someone because they self-identify as a MAGA Republican, I'm likely wrong. And it's narrow-minded of me, and it's small-minded of me, and it's dismissive. I think that's what Kierkegaard was getting to, is that it's like we have this need to comfortably understand someone. So we seek to learn their labels because we think their labels are going to help us understand them, right? And, it's like when someone, before I started, proclaiming that I'm atheist, I mean, even that label, people think that means something. They'll say, oh, only atheists get involved with genocide. And it's like, well, Hitler was very religious, so maybe that's not true. But again, it's that minimizing someone, dismissing someone just based on a label that either you gave to them or they gave to themselves. And what is all this about? Why do we have this? Why do we have this process of judging other people? Did it just come out of nowhere? Is it new? Is it worse now than it's ever been before, if it existed before? Like, there's a few questions to examine here, and I'll start with saying that it's absolutely not new. If you go back 10,000 years, we're still in prehistory, and I think it was the transitioning between Paleolithic, easy for me to say, Paleolithic and Pleistocene area, I think it's called. I said era. So Paleolithic and Pleistocene, right? I'm not going to try to say those again because obviously that ain't easy for me. But, this was the time of the mastodon, right? And humans and mastodons coexisted. And this was at a time where humans were transitioning from being pure hunter-gatherers to setting up agriculture. And that was significant because if you were able to master agriculture, it means you didn't have to wander around looking for your food. So that was the first attempt to make life easy. I mean, not really literally the first attempt, but I would say on a grand scale, maybe. And if there are people that study anthropology, you're probably thinking I'm really dumb right now, but this is just my thimble full of knowledge on this subject, right? So at that time, I don't think language was nearly as organized and standardized as it would become. And there were lots of judgments that had to be made to ensure survival, right? Hey, wait a minute. For those of you only listening, suddenly a chyron appeared under me. It says, flat, bloated Dominican talking nonsense. Well, that seems unnecessary. But anyway. You know, there had to be a lot of judgments back then. Like on wisdom, I call this talk friend, foe, predator, prey, because that was probably the first and most important judgment that anyone ever had to make at any given moment. Are you friend or foe? Right? So imagine you're in this village of roughly 150 people. You're working together to make sure that everybody is fed and everybody's protected. And now over the ridge, there's a group of people walking toward you. So you can't just sit and wait until either they shake your hand or they're trying to stab you to death. You have to make a judgment. Do they look like my friend or do they look like my foe? This is very important. A very important judgment that had to be made. Right? Same thing with predator-prey. Are you an animal that I can eat, which would be my prey? Or are you an animal that's going to try to eat me, which would be my predator? These are very basic and very important, actually critical judgments that had to be made. So that's in our DNA. That's our wiring as early prehistoric humans. I think early and prehistoric might be redundant. Sorry about that. But there'll be more of that. I can virtually guarantee it. So this facility, this mechanism for judging the situation that you're in, judging the people that you see, judging the animals that you see, this was critically important. And that type of mechanism is housed in the most ancient part of our brain, the brain stem, the part of the brain that is directly connected to the spinal cord, so that there is no delay between your decision or your awareness and the action that you have to take that corresponds to the reality that you're faced with. This is absolutely essential for survival. So that's why we go through this process when we meet someone. You know, even though it seems casual, you're having a cup of coffee with someone, you're trying to figure out friend, foe, predator, prey. And of course, you're not thinking that. That's not what polite society would have you think, so they call it getting to know someone. Doesn't that sound nice? Of course you're getting to know someone. You're getting to know whether they intend to kill you or not, or to sexually abuse you, or to steal from you. I mean, isn't that really what it is? You have this tabula rasa in front of you, blank slate, right? This new person you're meeting for the first time, they are a blank slate. The first thing you do in the process of judging that person is how they look to you. You can't judge a book by its cover, yeah, but you might be able to judge a murderer by the energy that they're giving off. And if you think you're a murderer and they're not, too bad for them. It's okay if you're wrong because they haven't experienced anything. That person doesn't know you thought that they were a murderer. That's just something you thought. And if you're wrong, you're happy to be wrong about that, right? Like I joke, well, it's really a half a joke. I have a pretty severe resting bitch face. And I know, people will look at me and think that I'm an ornery dude. I'm kind of big. People refer to me as big man all the time, big guy, And when I say big, I mean fat. But, I fill out my clothes. I look like, a football player, basically. Kind of on the small end of football players, but I look like a football player. Or someone that's just kind of stout and sturdy, right? And so if people come across me and I'm a big guy, because of my grooming, I look like 90% of the composite sketches out there, right? And I have this ornery look on my face, that might give someone pause. That might make someone uneasy, and I understand that, and I would never blame them for that. Good for you that you have the facility to preserve yourself. That's all that is. This guy looks like a problem. I'm going to avoid this guy. That's all that's about, right? But theoretically, that person is still a blank slate. You might have a feeling about it. Again, looks like a nice guy, looks like a bad guy. You might have a feeling, but you don't know because you don't have any data beyond the visual at this point. But now you're encountering someone. Now you're having an interaction. You're sitting down or standing up, right? Sitting down is not required for this, but you can just start talking and start learning about someone. And again, all the questions seem to be pretty standard, pretty repetitive. Think about every time you've met someone. Oh, where are you from? What's your family do? How many siblings do you have? And people know that they have to tread lightly around politics and religion, but they get to that eventually. People always figure out how to work those into the evaluation, information gathering process. But at the end of the day, we have to be honest about it. It's all about judging someone. And it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. When religions tell you don't judge someone, that's ridiculous. Especially since the guy in charge judges everybody. Oh my God, am I having an aneurysm? Wow. Anyway, the guy in charge judges everyone, right? And since we were made in their image, part of that image is to judge. It's also to create what it is to judge. And we have to judge if we want to preserve our safety. We have to. If you don't believe that, that's fine. You can walk around with what my ex-wife used to refer to as a fresh head, unencumbered by any problems of reality. Fine. That's your business. But I am going to judge everyone that I see because I want to stick around, because I want to protect myself. And I don't do it in a paranoid way. I don't walk around afraid at all. I've been in martial arts since 1977. There's very few things that would be problematic for me in a real world violent encounter. Doesn't mean that I know that I would win, but at least I have a shot because of my training, right? So I don't walk around scared, but I walk around judging people all the time. My favorite thing to do is wait until you start talking. That makes my judgment really easy because here you are now, fully representing your thoughts, ideas, philosophies, and beliefs. And I will gladly sit back and listen to you do that. And I will judge you. Are you friend, foe, predator, prey? That's all I want to know. I could subdivide those things. Are we like-minded? Do we disagree on fundamental principles of good and evil? like this thing with religious freedom, where you say, don't discriminate against me because of my religion, but I will discriminate against you because of your sexual orientation. That's horseshit. It's hypocritical. It's nonsense. So I don't want to engage in that. I want to be fair and balanced to whatever extent I can be. Again, I don't know whether I'm fair and balanced. I only know that I want to be, and that is my effort. But in order to be fair and balanced, I have to evaluate. And evaluate is just unnecessary syllables for judge. And I have to judge you. I have to first look at you to see, because look, come on, we know that there are people that look like problems. There are people out there that look like they want to start something, right? And you can pick that up just visually. You can feel their energy. You can see their body language. You can see the expression on their face. They look like a problem, so you avoid them. Guess what? You just judge that person, and good for you. That's what you need to do to survive. Stop being bamboozled by religious foppish twaddle from illiterate sand dwellers 2,000 years ago that didn't know what bacteria was. I'm not saying the book is useless, but let's give some context. But anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Friend, foe, predator, prey. We've got to know. We've got to evaluate these things. And let me just take a brief look. Got a few people listening on Wisdom. If you want to come up and start talking, feel free. And I will close out the YouTube live portion of this. So that's it. Yeah. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Lindsay May is going to come on and join us. Lindsay May, hang tight. I'm going to close out YouTube and switch out my technology so that I can speak with you. But that's it, folks. Judging is necessary. Judging is a survival tool. So in my opinion, judging is good. Can it be misapplied? Absolutely. Can it be abused? Absolutely. So can water. If you drink too much water, you can die. That doesn't make water inherently bad. All right. So that's it for now, folks. Thank you for joining me. For the folks watching on YouTube, for anybody else, if you want to see me live, you can go to youtube.com/@thepersistentrumor. And you can either continue typing /streams, or you can just click on the live tab. If you don't catch it live, it's all archived on YouTube, so you can watch it anytime you want. And that's it for now. Peace, love, and granola. Talk to you soon. Let's continue the conversation on the Wisdom app. What's happening, Lindsay?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent.
I only caught the tail end of your talk just now.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree. Judging is a totally necessary survival tool. You know, should we walk down the dark alley at 3 a.m. or not? Should we, it's definitely something I think when applied with good intentions, or maybe not even, maybe I shouldn't say when applied with good intentions. It can be used incorrectly. I like that you mentioned that, because there are a lot of people, a lot of groups of people who tend to have a real biased outline of how they judge by.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's not a good thing, and it's not that it, but I mean, we judge people every day. We judge if, is it you that was in sales, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, yeah, that in that job, you have to be able to have some type of judgment, and hopefully it's close to being on point, because you don't want to waste your breath with someone who you know or you can feel is not going to buy anything. And you also don't want to overtalk people who are on the cusp, and you might say too many things that make them change their mind. But more so like in everyday life, Yeah, you have to make judgment. I mean, we make them all the time, whether we realize it or not. Which line's going to move faster at the grocery store? Which, and it should be viewed with judgment itself. Just if this judgment is being made with bias or not. And it's not always easy for people to do. Like my talk yesterday about self-awareness is you have to be able to judge yourself. And I think that part is missing for
Yeah.
people.
No, that's an excellent point, and I'm glad you brought that up. And that would have been a useful thing for me to add to my talk. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, for me, the process of self-development started in 1987, and it's all about self-evaluation, right? You have to be honest with yourself, right? Like all of the programs that are anonymous, they have the 12 steps, and the first step is always the same for all of them, which is you have to admit there's a problem.
Right.
Right. And to admit there's a problem, that means you have to judge yourself and say, the way I'm living, the way I'm thinking, the way I'm behaving, the results that I'm getting are all problematic. So I have to change this. So judgment is also the beginning of change.
Yes. Yeah. No, and I think that would be so useful for people who are in unhealthy relationships. I think it would be useful for parents who feel like, they're not, maybe not necessarily fulfilling their duty. For example, so I was always an overweight kid, and unfortunately, my son. We went to his physical, his doctor physical the other day, and his fucking doctor. She could have just, I wish she would have said it a little nicer, or at least waited until he wasn't in earshot to tell me that his chart or his weight was off the charts.
Yeah.
And it bothered me a little bit because he's not a totally round boy. For his height, I think his weight is appropriate. And although he's much taller than most kids his age, I'm sure for the age range that she was putting his weight in, it was higher. But that's not the doctor's fault, right? Like I can be mad at her all I want, but at the end of the day, I'm the one who's in charge of the grocery shopping. I'm the one who's in charge of what activities he should be doing or shouldn't be doing for hours on end. And it's not easy to swallow sometimes. It's not easy to admit that it's not the doctor's fault or it's not my kid's fault. And it's easier said than done when applying it to yourself, but you have to be able to, if you want to improve, if you want healthy lives, if you want to change, if you want to address and fix the problem appropriately. I can't blame the doctor. I can't switch. I mean, I could if I wanted to, but that's not going to get us anywhere. We should be replacing the chips with apples. We should be walking instead of fucking Xboxing. There's a lot of things I can do differently if I can look at the problem correctly. But it's not always easy to do. And I would argue that a lot of people never do it. It's so much easier to point the finger of blame,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in my experience, and I think I'm going to say something that's relatively benign, but anything worthwhile accomplishing on any level is almost always going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not easy, but so what? I've been working for over 35 years to become a decent person. And it was gut-wrenching at times. It was exhausting at times. It was infuriating at times. People, oh, hey, Chocolate Yoddah, let me tell you what I think about you. And it's like, oh, fucking hell. But you know what? That was really useful. Like, I'll give you a specific example. Hopefully, I think I can do this very quickly. I was part of a support group for 5 years, non-clinical, just people supporting each other in the effort to be better. And I loved this group. I was there every week. I did all the assignments. I held this group in high esteem in my heart. And one day, there was a topic every week, and one day the topic was me. And they were saying, we don't feel like you want to be here. We don't feel like you are connected to us, da, 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 da. And I'm thinking, holy shit, I feel the exact opposite way. What the fuck am I doing to convey the opposite? Like, I don't get it. But that feedback that they gave me was so critically important. because I had to take responsibility for how I was communicating. Because here's the thing. We fully accept the idea that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? But why don't we understand that communication is in the ear of the listener?
Mm.
And it doesn't matter if I think you should understand what I'm saying. What matters is what you're understanding. And if you're not understanding what I'm saying, then fuck me, I got to change what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're talking to anybody who you want to continue having conversations with, yeah, that's the other part of it, is you have to decide if the listener is, if the listener is worth talking to. And I know that might sound shitty. But there are some people who you try to give feedback to and they don't receive it.
Yeah.
And I see that for myself. It's like, thank you for giving me a illustration of what I don't want to be.
Yeah.
That's what I take from it. Cause I had, it's so I say that because I had the same experience with a recovery group that I loved going to. I mean, I really looked forward to interacting with these people twice a week. They were a good group of people. And for the most part, I wasn't, far off. I think they equally enjoyed me. There was one particular person though, who, Jesus, it was like it wasn't going through to her. She was expressing how she wasn't in custody of her child at the time, and she was only allowed phone calls with her. Her daughter was 4. And she said that she knew her daughter's father was listening in on the calls, which I would fully expect, honestly. And I would try different ways, to express to her, like, don't let that bother you. Just talk to your daughter. And then one week I kind of gave it to her very bluntly, which, considering the fact I'm a pretty direct speaker on most occasions, I felt like I had sugarcoated it long enough. And I finally told her, look, your daughter is 4. If you don't get on the phone and just talk about rainbows and ice cream and kitty cats and shit, it doesn't matter if he's listening. She's 4. You can tell her any fantastical thing and she'll be thrilled that you finished the phone call, because up till now, you've been hanging up on her because of him. And I don't think you realize how that makes her feel. And And although I think that was pretty accurate and good advice, she just hung up because it was a virtual meeting we were doing, and she just got off the call. And I was like, Jesus, you're expressing that this is your biggest issue with yourself in your life every week. And I don't know any other advice to give you other than that. And I didn't want to be the person who like that, because she's constantly putting the blame elsewhere, right? She's putting the blame elsewhere on the dad that's listening in, on the daughter who's not taking it off speaker. And it's like, Jesus, the world is not going to conform to you, no, despite whatever upbringing you've had that did, perhaps. The world owes you dick, and you have to be able to function successfully in it if you want to overcome any obstacles you're having. And like you said earlier, it is infuriating sometimes. It is very hard to sit there and listen to not positive feedback about yourself, but it's crucial if you want to function in society. But it's not easy, and I think the more people accept that aspect of it, the better. But it's tricky.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, I agree. And it's what Doobie talks about all the time. He says it's the dialogue that allows us to grow, right? And the thing of it is, like I've said very often, my friends are absolutely useless to me if they don't tell me the truth about me.
Yes.
Because, as self-aware as I think I am, I cannot be the observed and the observer at the same time. So my friends who I trust and love, they can be the observer that can give me the feedback that I can't see. And that is so helpful. If your goal is to grow as a person, feedback from people who love you and care about you and have your best interests at heart is invaluable. And if all you want are people around you that are going to say, yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're the best. You're smart. You're wonderful. You're amazing. Well, you're not going to get anywhere with that. So you've got to be willing to hear the unpleasant thing. I won't get specific, but you and I on the back channel, I was saying, hey, that person who doesn't like me, they're entitled to that opinion. I know that I have that effect on people. I'm not stupid. I know people get really upset at some of the things that I say. And you know what? I get upset at some of the things that they say. But there will never be a day where I tell someone you don't have the right to say that.
Right.
And that includes, Benjamin Franklin famously said that you don't have to protect popular speech. Freedom of speech is mostly important when it's unpopular speech.
Yep.
So I welcome all the people that think I'm an asshole and think I don't know what I'm talking about. That's fine. That, because I can respond to that a few different ways. I can dismiss it. I can take it in and decide that it's true. I can take it in and decide it's not true. Or I can say, hey, maybe they have a point. And maybe if I want to be received better, I have to take responsibility for the way that I communicate. And I've done that process, and I've gotten to the point where I am going to say what I say based on what I believe is true, and I will let the chips fall where they may. Some people are going to like it, some people are not, and it's none of my fucking business either way.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think it's important to, in terms of people who we call our quote unquote friends, and if they do give us rough feedback, it's important to be able to justify if that advice or that feedback is with the appropriate intentions, because we do have people in our lives at times who give us advice that isn't necessarily for our benefit but for theirs. We might have friends that experience a level of envy with what we have, or people that are just dissatisfied with their own lives. Sometimes their advice might be skewed and they're unaware of it. So it's important to gauge or judge their standings in life, what their intentions are for you, and if it is positive or constructive. Because constructive is a nice word of saying they're not going to fluff it up. But there are who do that for your benefit, and there's friends who don't. And I have some of both in my circle. Some I take with a grain of salt. Some of it I don't. Some of it I assume that person is telling me that because of an impression I'm leaving on people that I'm not intending.
Right.
And it isn't, and I try to be grateful for those people, because I'm sure it's not easy for them to say that. A lot of times we don't realize how difficult it must have been for someone to bring us that information or bring us that viewpoint. Parents, some parents I realize are shit and are just trying to be mean. They're dissatisfied with their own life and they want to vicariously live through you know what I mean? And it's not always easy to discern, but it's so important that you try, because you can't listen to advice that has no merit, that has no, it's kind of like, I don't want to take flight lessons from anybody who's not a pilot, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, I think this is a really good topic that more people would benefit if they take it in versus thinking it doesn't apply to them, because it applies to all of us. We all need to hear the truth about ourselves at some point.
Yeah, 100%. I know your time is going down, but you reminded me of an incident with my son. But before I get to that, I just want to share with everybody that I just posted an amazing conversation that Lindsay and I had, and I just posted it Friday. It's free on Patreon. Go check it out. Patreon.com/thepersistentrumor. And for those of you who are really into wisdom and know some of the people that are prominent on here, I've had conversations with Greg from Greg's Take, with Doobie, with Charente Carr and her husband Leroy, and also with Lindsay. And not published yet, but just yesterday, I recorded a podcast with Noble Ron, and it was a lot of fun. So check it out. All of that stuff is for free on Patreon. But here's the thing that Lindsay reminded me of. It was extremely important to me that I give my son a voice. And that's because I didn't have a voice when I was a child. I wasn't allowed to speak. My opinion didn't matter. My thoughts didn't matter. And so I wanted to raise him a different way. And right around the time he was around maybe 9 or 10, we were doing what we normally did on a Sunday, which was do laundry. And while it was drying, we would go to a place to eat. I won't mention the place. And we would get the same thing every week, right? And one week, they insisted that I had to pay more for this thing because it included a substitute, because it was one of those things where it was like a packaged meal, but the package included coffee, and I thought maybe coffee is not a good idea for a 9 or 10-year-old child. So I went with hot chocolate, which of course was probably equally as stupid, but that was my best thinking at that time. Cause we're talking about 28 years ago. Right. So, I got upset that they were trying to charge me more. I was like, hey man, I come here every week. I order the same exact thing. This is how much you charge me. And by the way, the reason I was upset was because I was poor and every penny counted, right? So I had made the calculation of, what I needed to spend on this meal and then get through the rest of the day. And so it was a real jolt to my agenda to have someone telling me, no, I got to pay more for this thing. So I wound up getting into a heated argument with the guy behind the counter. So we leave, and while we're headed to the next thing that we're going to do, my son turned to me and he said, Dad, you were a real jerk in there. And I know some of you as parents are probably like, what? A child said what? But here's the thing. That was one of my proudest moments as a parent, because my desire to give my son a voice had been fulfilled. And that was amazing to me. And so I turned to him and I said, you know what, buddy? You're right. I was. And I'll tell you what I was thinking so that you can understand my position. And it wasn't in an effort to convince him that he was wrong. The fact is that, excuse me, pardon me. The fact is that he was right. I was a jerk in there. I just wanted to give him context. But that's basically how all of my relationships are now. If one of my friends thinks I'm acting like a jerk, I want them to tell me that. It is not my desire to act that way in life, but it's going to happen. I was at a bagel shop a couple of years ago. This guy ordered a bagel with butter, and they brought it out with butter and jelly. And this guy got shot out of a cannon like someone was trying to sexually abuse his mother. Like, this guy he was screaming to the point where I turned and looked at this guy because my martial arts sensibility kicked in. And I was like, well, just in case this guy breaks bad, I want to be ready to do what I need to do. That's how upset this guy was. And, I generally don't ever even approach getting that upset. But if I go a little off, I want the people that I trust and love the most to tell me, hey man, you're acting wrong. You're acting foul. You're doing the wrong thing. That's important. And Lindsay illustrated it beautifully, like that, the evaluation, the judgment, friend, foe, predator, prey. We've got to know these things, folks. We've got to know these things. So don't believe the hype. Don't be gaslit by religion telling you, oh, you're wrong to judge. No, you're absolutely not wrong to judge. It is necessary for your survival, right? And if we believe that we were made in their image, because that's what it says in the Bible, man was created in our image, plural. If we believe that, then why would we think that the way we live in the world is wrong? Our design must be perfect if the Creator is perfect, right? So all those naughty bits that feel really tingly when someone touches them, that's part of the design. If you didn't want that, why did you put that in me? But that's a story for another time. But anyway, that's actually what I tell women who are religious so that I can have sex with them. And it works every time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be here all week. And I literally will be here all week. I do this Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. I simulcast on YouTube and Wisdom and Clubhouse. And soon, very soon, I'll be able to take these calls in real time and I won't have to switch out and do all this other nonsense. I'm working on it, folks. I'm trying to get better at this thing. But thank you to Lindsay May for coming on and sharing her thoughts with me. And thank you to John X, Wandering Fool, Bling Vieira, Deirdre Parker, Nasty One, I think it looks like, Jason Kinte, Martin John Garcia, Daily Shift, T Solo, Janelle, and Life Love Lessons. Thank you all for joining. As always, peace, love, and granola. Talk to you soon.